So, on the 29th of December 2021, I got a PB average of 5, which was a 9.85, which somehow brought my PB average from 10.77 down to 9.85, which is almost a second, which is ludicrous. It's my first ever sub-10, and that's just insane. So I thought I'd take this time to break down all the solves for you guys. The scrambles and reconstructions will all be in the description, and the scrambles will also be on screen as I do them. Alright, on to the first solve, which was a 977, which is a pretty good start to the average. All the scrambles will be both in the description as well as on screen. So, I noticed a really good red cross on this first solve. I noticed that blue and yellow were solved, and red and white can go in relation to each other if I do a D move like that. And I noticed that throughout the whole solution, this pair would be preserved. That wouldn't move at all. So I did a D prime, inserted green and white, brought it back, and went straight into this pair like this. Next thing I saw that these two were already set up like that. And I saw that these two could be paired up in 3 moves, and I did a back insert which looks like this. And I noticed this pair at the end, which I did like this. Lastly is OLL and PLL. Alright, so the second solve was a 993, which is pretty good, meaning I had a counting 9 in this average right from the first 2 solves, which is great. I decided to go for white on this one, and I noticed that one of the pieces were already solved, and all of the white edges were around this green center here. So that means I can plan my first pair here. I noticed this blue-orange, because it's on the opposite side, is not going to move at all, so I trace the opposite edge here, which would have gone here, and then straight up here, so I can go straight into my first pair. And the way I finger tricked it was I did an R2, a D, and then a rolling R like this, another D, and then R2 back the other way. Rotated back this way to solve this pair. I noticed that this corner was solved as I did this pair, like that, and I noticed the edge right here. So I did a D like this, put it in, and I wanted these slots to be at the front, so I did a wide U prime like that. Next thing I saw were these two, which I went like this, rotated back to insert here. Notice that the corner solved itself here, and the last edge was here, at which I solved like this. OLL looks like this, and PLL like this. Alright, so the third solve was an 1111, which is the slowest solve in the average. However, it had some tough F to L, and it's still not a bad solve itself. So first of all, it had a very easy cross. Blue and white already solved here on orange, and green and yellow can go in 1 move each. So it's a 2-move cross. Question is whether I do green first or yellow first. And I noticed this pair right here, which I can go straight into. And to keep the edge orientation, I would have to do yellow first, so I can go do this pair without rotating. So I did yellow first, then green, and went straight into this pair here. And then I saw this pair. I rotated and inserted it into the front. And I noticed this pair next, this blue-yellow. So I took that out, inserted that into the front, and then I just saw this case going to the back right here, which is simply anti-soon into an insertion like that. I had this OLL, which isn't the best, but I had an H perm right after. Alright, fourth scramble was a 986, and I have to say this one was probably my favorite solve in the entire average. Even though it had the most rotations, I kept up my TPS. It's the highest TPS solve of the entire average, and there's a nice PLL skip at the end. So, I looked at green cross here because 2 of the pieces, yellow and orange, were already solved in relation to each other, and I can do white and red at the same time here. Planning my first pair. I can see that this edge is just going to go across the other side here. This corner will go back and then over this way. So I can go straight into my first pair just like that. So cross like this, paired up, I rotated to insert. I saw this pair right here, red, yellow. Went into that, rotated, inserted that again. Went into this pair right here, yellow-orange. Straight into this one right here, red-white. And had this nice COLL, which is just an R prime, Y perm, and R. And UAUF, just like that, with a PLL skip. Alright, so here we go. This is the final solve of the average, which was actually the fastest solve of the average at an 824. And it's because of this solve that the total average was sub-10. I don't know how this happened, but I was so nervous at this point. I was already sitting on a very, very good average, and somehow this was the fastest solve of the entire average. And here it is. So we have a very easy red cross right here, with white and blue solved in relation to each other. Green, which can move down in one move, and yellow, which can move in at the same time as green here, while also preserving this corner. So I looked for the X cross. So the corresponding edge was down here, and firstly I solved the cross edges like that, and there are two ways that I could have dealt with this edge better than the way I did. So the first way was to either take it out from the back, like this, so the edge is here, and insert it into the back, D2, which would give me the X cross, or I could have pulled that to the front, and then inserted it into the back like that, D2, which would also give me an X cross. Both of those were options that were actually better than what I did, but what I did ended up blessing me with godly F2L, so I'm just going to say I totally knew that going into the solve. What I did instead was I pulled it out to the front, U2, and then inserted it into the back, and then D2, which gave me the X cross. I noticed this edge was solved, and I kept that information in mind while I did this next pair here, which I actually rotated this way to solve it into the front. I saw this very easy F2L case, or like this. And the last corner was here, which I already knew this edge was back here, so I went straight into it like this. I had free ref for OL and an H perm. So yeah, there we go. Like I mentioned, this is my first ever sub-10 average of 5 for 3x3, and this literally came out of the blue. You notice that all of the crosses were really, really easy, and all of the PLLs were actually edge PLLs, except for one, which was a PLL skip, so I got very, very lucky. Scrambles 5 times in a row, which is not a crime. So yeah, there is my first ever sub-10 average of 5. See y'all next time, guys.